This video is going to show you a little bit about using Microsoft PowerPoint. Your version might be different than the one that I have, so there may be some slight differences, but the overall idea should be pretty similar. I'm going to show you how to create slides, how to organize a slide deck, how to format the appearance, and then how to run the slideshow. When you launch PowerPoint, you should see a default slide, and if not, choose File New or the equivalent and just create a blank generic slide. Then click in the title and type in some information. When done, click in the subtitle and add in more text. Text is always an optional piece inside a slide. In the Home menu, I'm going to click on the drop-down by New Slide. So not on the actual icon for the new slide, which just adds another slide exactly the same as the current one, but the drop-down so that I can configure the look of the new slide. There's a lot of different formats, but title and content is a really easy one when you're first starting with a slide deck. Again, I'll click in the title and add some text. I like adding an overview, and maybe later I'll come back and I'll populate the body with a couple of bullets introducing the main topics, the sections that make up my entire slide deck. For now, I'll go add a new slide. This time I'm going to introduce a new section header. I like to use the section header whenever I'm introducing a new major topic. This topic's going to actually introduce different tips and tricks related to adding slides, so it'll actively guide the conversation around the video. I'll use the new slide icon one more time to add another slide. After adding the section, I'll go back to the title and content slide style. So far, this exercise lets you see a couple of different tips when it comes to inserting slides. Some people like to complete a slide in its entirety before moving ahead. I personally prefer to go through and outline my overall slideshow so that I have a pretty good idea of what all the major components are, and then go back later and fill in the details. I have nothing against using the menu and the icons to add slides, but if I'm outlining, this takes a while. The manual process becomes a little tedious. So let's talk a little bit about using the outline when creating a slideshow. The outline view is pretty easy to access by using the pane that's located on the left side of my screen. In the outline view, I'm going to just scroll down and click next to the end of my fifth slide, which actually reads Use Outline. I'll just click at the end of the text and then press Enter. A new slide is automatically inserted, and it uses the same format as the slide prior to it. Once I go in and I type in some text, you can see that it automatically appears in the title of the slide. Then I press Enter. I'll add another slide using this same setup. It's really quick to add a bunch of slides in the outline view just by pressing Enter and typing in text and pressing Enter and typing in more text. There's a lot of benefits to outlining slideshows. This time, when I'm done, I press Enter and then Tab in order to create a subordinate entry under slide number 8. I'll add a couple of quick pieces of information. After each entry, I press Enter. Instead of adding text, I could also use Shift-Tab in order to unindent and then create a new slide number 9. It's also pretty easy to reorganize slides in this type of a view. Just hover over a slide and click and drag it to a new location. It's a little too easy almost. If you drag too far to the left or the right, you're also indenting or unindenting and creating subordinates or primary entries. So your best bet, carefully move straight up and down. If you want to create new slides or you want to take an existing slide and promote or demote it, remember to click at the beginning of a text and then Tab or Shift-Tab. Here I've just dragged it back down to where it was originally. The only tricky part at this point is to get my insertion point back so that I can continue to work. Depending on the sensitivity of the mouse and your system setup, you may have to click 2 or 3 times in order to get the insertion point exactly where you want it. If you also have text like simple promotion when moving to new slides and you don't have an empty bullet, you'd have to do it at the end of the text new slides so that you can press Enter. In my case, I have an empty bullet, so I'm going to go in and double or triple click in order to get my insertion point so that I can continue. That may actually be the trickiest part of working with this. In any case, I've got my insertion point, so I can Shift Tab in order to unindent and move ahead with new slides. Because each new slide mimics the look of the previous one, it becomes important to know how to change the slide format when you're in outline view. You can always do this after the fact, and the way that you change the layout in outline is exactly the same as the way you change the layout inside an existing slide if you're in the slides view. With my new slide displayed, I'm going to go up and click the drop down that reads Layout. When I'm outlining my slides or I'm creating them very early on, I usually just toggle back and forth between title and content and a section header. But there are times where, as I begin to populate the slides with more content, I use some of the other formats. A really common one might be to content if I need a 2-column layout because I have a lot of bullets that appear under a given slide. Of course, now if I press enter, I'm going to duplicate the look and feel of the current slide. Once more, I'll reset it to the default that I like for the bulk of my slides. I like doing up almost all my slides normally using just title and content because I've often got a quick outline sitting on a sheet of paper next to me and I'm typing in information, and later it's pretty easy for me to go back and select a couple of slides here and there and make them into a section header. That saves me having to go in and change the layout all the time, and I can really quickly type in my content, use my tab to indent if I need to put in a subordinate, use my Shift tab to unindent so that I can create new slides, and in a couple of minutes at most, take anything that I've written out on the sheet of paper that outlines my slides and create a basic slide deck that I can then go in and start to configure the layout for my title slides and my section header slides, and then start to focus more on some of the content and then get into design. Speaking of design, let's see what we can do beyond the default appearance of a slide. It's really quick to apply custom designs that are pre-installed with PowerPoint. To get started, switch over to the Design tab. You can see that there's a lot of default themes available, and all you need to do is move into one and click it. You can also use the scroll bars located on the right next to the last theme in order to navigate through many of the available options. There's a lot of themes and they provide a high-level initial overview of what your slides might look like. As you work with the themes, you'll notice that the outline view doesn't necessarily show you quite as much about what you're getting as the slide view does, so I'm going to change my view. This makes it a little easier to see what the theme does to different slides with different layouts, and really quickly go in and choose a different color combination in a couple of clicks. That left pane updates every time you change the color. Once you find one that you like, move on to the fonts. Set your design early because things like the color combinations, the slide layout, and even the fonts can impact what things look like on screen, and it's best to get that done in the early design stages rather than after you've gone in and really populated it with a lot of content. I'm content with my current setup, so let's move on to the next feature. I want to mention editing and creating content. If you have material that's in a slide, and instead of using the outline view, you need to promote and demote it, the exact same idea applies. You click and press Tab or Shift Tab to promote or demote information. There's also room for notes down at the bottom of the screen. Now these don't show up in your slideshow, but they are really helpful. As your slides are generally put into the right order and you start to add a little bit of content, use the notes for several different reasons. When you're creating your slides, it can be helpful to put notes together so that it guides you on developing the content and thinking about what's going to be put into a given slide. The notes shouldn't be a static object though. Over time, continue to update and develop them. As you begin to complete your slideshow, you'll likely want to replace the notes that you had for the development with something that's going to be usable by whoever it is that's doing the presentation to help guide them through some of the additional things that they need to think about when they speak to the points on a given slide. Once you're done putting together your slides, you think they're in the right order, you've put together all of the information that you feel is pertinent to the presentation, go in and click Slideshow. Here, click on From Beginning and start to work your way through the slides, begin to develop your presentation. Take additional notes as far as timing, as far as content and pacing are concerned, and continue to develop your slideshow into the finished presentation that you want to deliver.